It's episode 34. We're still down here, locked down in the basement. I got my Guns N' Roses t-shirt and a couple cans of beans, but I'm going to find a way to be happy. It is Rodney Dangerfield's birthday today. You know, Rodney Dangerfield. I don't get no respect. You know, when I was a kid, my parents moved a lot, but I always found them. Gotta love Rodney. It's National Go for a Ride Day. I don't know what that means. It doesn't mean anything to me, but in the interest of, you know, finding some happiness and joy in these hard times, I'm going to introduce a new segment called the He Mistook Her for a Swan Joy Ride Day, and I'm going to tell you things that brought me some joy this week, and you can tell me things that brought you some joy this week, and yeah, maybe we'll have some frickin' joy. Okay, so for a start, if you watched Austin City Limits the other day, there was a lady on there named Jackie Venson, and she is a kick-ass guitar player, and she was just doing this great blues rock stuff, and I didn't really know much about Jackie Venson, so I dug into it. She's 30 years old, from Austin, and she does that Stevie Ray Vaughan, you know, Gary Clark Jr. kind of blues guitar, and she just kicks ass. But the thing is, as a guitar player myself, and perhaps some of you are guitar players, you know that sometimes when you're playing guitar, you get the guitar face, right? So sometimes, like, you're doing a solo and you feel like going like that, or you know, all that, you know, guitar face. I have always tried to avoid the guitar face. I don't like the guitar face, but sometimes you just feel the guitar face coming on. So you try and look as non-goofy as you can. Anyway, Jackie Venson has got the world's greatest guitar face. When she's rocking out, she just has this gigantic smile on her face, and she's looking up like she's in direct communication with God. And it made me happy. It made me happy to see this lady playing these great songs and just like being happy. Like, what the fuck? So that's great. I heard the song the first time I saw your face, the Roberta Flack version on WFMU from New Jersey the other day. If you're not listening to WFMU, you should be, okay? Because it's fucking amazing. So this ties in with our folk rock and our folk history theme, because that song was actually written by Ewan MacColl, which is, he's the Woody Guthrie of England. You know, he was a real fixture of the English folk scene in the 40s and 50s and into the 60s. And he wrote this song for Peggy Seeger, Pete Seeger's half-sister. And he was having a torrid love affair with her. Even as he was married, I think he wrote this song while he was still married. He phoned it into her over the phone. And it's a good song. It's a pretty good song. He's done versions, Peggy did versions. But when you hear the Roberta Flack version, it's like comparing a frickin' go-kart to a freight train, okay? Roberta Flack took that song, which was a basically good song with good bones and good lyrics, and she made it into this monster vehicle of heart-wrenching soul. Like, you can barely listen to this song without crying. You know, I already told you I'm a sensitive guy, and holy smokes, you should go listen to that song right now. Just dial it up on your Spotify thingy and just listen to it. It's mind-bending. The last thing that made me happy this week was seeing Trump's toad, Giuliani, with hair dye dripping down his face. It's like the Addams family has gone political. You know, it's like cousin is doing a press conference, or, you know, Uncle Festus is doing a press conference. You know, you can't make this shit up. It is just so amusing and appropriate. It's appropriate that Uncle Festus is actually making these proclamations for that toad. So there you go. That's the end of the Joyride for this week. So you may have noticed that there's been a lot of murderous activity going on in the previous episodes. You got your Stagger Lee, you got your Frankie and Johnny. There's a lot of frickin' Jesse James, a lot of murdering going on. And the thing is, if you look at folk songs, they're pretty frickin' murderous, okay? So there's a lot of murdering going on. So you can't have that much murdering without having a couple funerals, okay? So today we're going to talk about one of the great granddaddies of the outrageous blues funeral, and it's called, this song is called The Unfortunate Rake, okay? So think about some of the great funerals. I mean, on this day, November 22nd, JFK was shot, okay? Think about that. He had a good funeral. Lots of people. Alexander the Great, he had a good funeral. Apparently he died in Babylon. They pickled him in honey. Took him 2 years to take him back to Egypt. And then they put him in a gold casket. Michael Jackson got put in a gold casket too. I don't know about the honey. Okay, I don't know about the honey. But, Rudolph Valentino, he had a great funeral. 100,000 people, like women swooning. Pola Negre throws herself on there claiming that he just proposed to her like 10 seconds before he died. And, at the funeral home, there's apparently Benito Mussolini hired a bunch of black shirts to guard the coffin. That turned out to be fake news. They weren't actual fascists. They were just fake fascists, hired Hollywood hack actors. But, where's Antifa when you need them? Even fake fascists should be knocked off their little pedestals once in a while. So anyway, all these great funerals. So what kind of funeral do we want? Do you want to just go out with a whimper, or do you want to go out with a bang? Do you want just a grieve and leave, or do you want to fucking have an outrageous blues funeral? Let's figure it out.
As I was a-walking down by St. James Hospital, as I was a-walking down there one day, what should I spy but one of my comrades wrapped up in flannel, though warm was the day. I asked him what ailed him, I asked him what failed him, I asked him the cause of all his complaint. It's all on account of some handsome woman. 'Tis she that has caused me to weep and lament. And had she but told me before she disordered me, had she but told me of it in time, I might have got pills, salts of white mercury, but now I'm cut down in the height of my prime. Get 6 young soldiers to carry my coffin, 6 young girls to sing me a song, and each of them carry a bunch of green laurel, so they don't smell me as they bear me along. Don't muffle your drums, play your fifes merrily, play a quick march as you carry me along. And fire your bright muskets over my coffin, saying there goes an unfortunate lad to his home.
The Unfortunate Rake. What do you think of that? Pretty gloomy, eh? So I want to break this down for you so you know what are the parts. But before we do that, we have to obviously address the elephant in the room, and that is, yes, you're correct. Between the last scene and this one, I got a haircut. It was getting too shaggy. Something had to be done, and I think it looks fantastic. All right, so The Unfortunate Rake. All right, so here's the deal. It's an old song, 1790, and it's like the model for a million other songs that kind of morphed out of it. And you know who loves this shit? You do, don't you? Ethnomusicologists. Oh, they eat this stuff up. There's controversy. There's debate. There's slapping. They just live for this crap. So anyway, lots of discussion about the Unfortunate Rake. So here's the general plan of the Unfortunate Rake. Okay, so somebody's walking along, the narrator, let's call him, and he sees his buddy, and he says, "Hey, buddy, you look like shit. You look like you're sick. You're all wrapped up, and it's a hot day out. You know, are you sick?" And buddy says, "As it happens, yes, I am sick. I'm not feeling my best. So actually, the cause of my distress, my being disordered," I love that, "he's been disordered by a young woman." So what we mean by that is that he's got a sexually transmitted infection, specifically syphilis, which is a bad thing to have in 1790. You die from it, pretty much, you know, or you go mad. First you go mad and you die, or then you just die. So anyway, the guy's got the clap because he's been fucking around with prostitutes, basically, camp followers. He's a soldier, and you know, soldiers, camp followers goes together like soup and sandwich, right? So he's out there screwing around. In some of the versions of the song, he says that she's his own true love, but you know, that doesn't cut the mustard, does it? So he's messing around with this girl, and he says, "If only she would have told me, if only I would have known, then I could have got some pills or some salts of white mercury." Salts of white mercury is what they used to treat syphilis with. I have no idea if it worked. It sounds dangerous. I don't think I'd try it. But anyway, that's all they had in those days. Anyway, the guy knows his goose is cooked, right? He's heading to the next world. So he says to his buddy, "All right, here's how I want my funeral to happen." And he describes this elaborate, complicated funeral, and there's all sorts of moving parts and people, and it's going to be a pain in the ass to organize, but that's what he wants. And when that's all done, he wants a military band to play the drums and the fifes and the pipes, and he wants somebody shooting guns over his coffin. That's what he wants. So that's the general plan of the Unfortunate Rake, and it is the model that everything else falls out of. So pretty soon, the Unfortunate Rake goes from a soldier song to a sailor song, and you can imagine sailors in every port of call. Of course, that goes perfectly with the whole socially transmitted infection concept, right? And I will say that there are two occasions that I'm aware of in film where actors have actually sang the Unfortunate Rake a cappella. One is in that TV series Deadwood, where Ian McShane, he's the actor who plays Al Swearingen, who is the owner of the whorehouse in Deadwood, and he sings it. So apparently he's been a bit disordered. And then there's another one in that Coen Brothers film, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and Brendan Gleeson sings it a cappella while he's riding along in a train to some Victorian lady who's appalled by this. So anyway, it's a kind of a famous gloomy song. So it's going from soldiers to sailors. It eventually ends up with miners, lumberjacks, anything you can think of. But it follows the pattern. And it even jumps the gender gap, if you can believe it. So there is actually a song from the girl's point of view, the woman's point of view, called The Bad Girl's Lament. And, you know, it's kind of the same, you know. She starts out, the narrator is actually her dad. So it's like, as I walk down to St. James Hospital, St. James Hospital, early one day, I spied my young daughter all wrapped up in white linen and cold as the clay. And then, the daughter explains that, yeah, she was quite the party girl in her time, but now her goose is cooked, and she's heading to the next world, and she describes the funeral she wants, and she wants a bunch of pretty maidens, and red roses, and blah, blah, blah. So there's actually another one from Kentucky called The Girl in the Dillinger Case. And this is not Dillinger the gangster. It's Dillinger, just some dude named Dillinger. And he was a strapping young lad who was a bouncer in a body house. And one day he's bouncing in the body house, as he does, and the cops do a raid. And he's surprised by this, and he kills both of the police officers. And they arrest him and execute him. But the song is from his girlfriend's point of view. And it's, all the same, she kind of thing. And, she describes her former gay life, Once I was young and sweet as the roses, out on the street so gaudy and gray. Not gray, gay. First to the dance hall and then to the whorehouse. Now from the whorehouse I go to my grave. And then she makes her demands for her funeral, which is getting pretty kind of involved. The 9th Street girls will carry my coffin. 8th Street streetwalkers will sing a sweet song. Give each of them a bunch of red, red roses to keep me from smelling as they carry me along. So she's got a heart of gold. She's got a heart of gold because she's so concerned that everybody's going to be offended by her smell of death as they carry her along. Anyway, so I think you can probably guess where this is going. So the song travels out to the western United States, and it becomes a cowboy song. So cowboy songs out on the western plains, your chances of dying of syphilis are much reduced because there's no gals, there's no women, out there in the early days. So basically, the song that ended up from the cowboy song was basically about getting shot, which is probably a much more likely way of dying at that time. And you know what I'm talking about. As I walked out in the streets of Laredo, as I walked out in Laredo one day, I spied a young cowboy all wrapped in white linen, all wrapped in white linen and cold as the clay. So the cowboy describes all his former gay life, not his gray life. And then he tells you what kind of shit he wants going on at his funeral. Get 16 gamblers to carry my coffin. Get 6 jolly cowboys to sing me a song. Take me to the graveyard and lay the sod over me. I'm a young cowboy and I know I've done wrong. So, from the western plains, it ends up in New Orleans. And if anybody knows how to throw a funeral, it's the folks in New Orleans. They got the jazz funeral. It is it's a party event, and it goes back, and it has its roots in voodoo religion, which came to America via Haiti and other places from West Africa. And it's basically a celebration of the dead, and it's a way to let the dead go. So you got your brass band, right? And they start going down the street, and then they're playing their mournful dirges, and they drop you off at the cemetery, and then the second line comes in. The second line are the people who are not exactly the family or the primary grievers. They're just everybody else, and they get involved in this party, and the music heats up, and it turns into a real jazz funeral, a real party, which is, a crazy event. So, you can imagine what happens. You do know what happens, don't you? It was down in old Joe's barroom, on the corner by the square. The usual crowd was assembled, and Big Joe McKinney was there. I went down to St. James Infirmary. I saw my baby there. She was laying out on a cold white table. So cold, so white, so fair. How do you want that funeral to happen? When I die, oh, bury me in a high-top Stetson hat. Put a $20 gold piece in my watch chain, so God'll know that I died standing pat. I want 6 crapshooters for my pallbearers. Chorus gonna sing me a song. Put a jazz band on my hearse wagon, raising hell as I roll along. Raising hell as I roll along. Gotta love that. So, after New Orleans, this song pops up in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's sung by a fella named Blind Willie McTell. And he has got the most outrageous blues funeral song that I know of, and it's called the Dying Crapshooter Blues. Blind Willie, fascinating guy. He started off recording in the 20s. He went right through the 50s. He's one of the rare blues guys that just kept going. Like a lot of them, they made records in the late 20s. The Depression happened. The record companies went out of business. They went back to being farmers and janitors, whatever they did. Blind Willie kept going right all the way through. Bad timing on Blind Willie, though, because he died before the great folk revival. So nobody came around to rediscover him. Anyway, Blind Willie McTell, amazing 12-string blues guitar player, and he did the Dying Crapshooters Blues, and I'm going to leave you with that. So here's an outrageous blues funeral. Dig this, if you will. You guys be good. Little Jesse was a gambler both night and day. He used crooked cards and dice. He was a son of a gun, good-hearted, but he had no soul. Jesse's heart was hard and cold like ice. Well, little Jesse was a wild and a reckless gambler. He won a gang of change. Jesse began to lose his money and he was all alone. And his heart had even turned to stone. And the police walked up and they shot my friend Jesse down. Boy, he had to die someday. He had a gang of gamblers at his bedside. And these are the words that he had to say. Well, I guess I ought to know exactly how I want to go. How do you want to go, Jesse? I want 8 crapshooters to be my pallbearers, but let them be all veiled down in black. I want 9 men going to the graveyard, but I only want 8 men coming back. I want a gang of gamblers gathered round my coffin side, crooked cards printed on my hearse. I don't want no crapshooters grieving over me, 'cause my life's been a doggone curse. Well, send the poker players down to the graveyard, buddy. Dig a grave with the ace of spades. I want 12 police officers at my funeral march, high sheriff playing blackjack leading the parade. I want the judge and the solicitor who jailed me 40 times, put a paradise in my shoes. What else? Let a deck of cards be my tombstone, buddy. I got the Dying Crapshooter Blues. Well, 16 real good crapshooters, 16 bootleggers to sing me a song. I want 16 racket men gambling, couple tending bar while I rollin' along. He want 22 women out of the Hampton Hotel. He want 26 off of South Bell. I want 29 women out of North Atlanta. No, little Jesse didn't pass out so swell. Well, his heart was aching, his head was thumping. A little Jesse went down, bouncing and jumping. Folks don't be standing round old Jesse crying. He wants everybody to do the Charleston while he's dying, 1 foot up and a toenail dragging. Throw my little Jesse in the hoodoo wagon. Come on here, mama, with that can of booze. I got the Dying Crapshooter Blues. I got the Dying Crapshooter Blues. I got the